Hi, my name is Jonathan Long with the Ruston Church of Christ. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to look at three things about meeting, about the church assembling together. You know, throughout the COVID pandemic and especially the lockdowns that people went through, a lot of places church attendance was wrecked. And then people were hesitant to go back. They didn't feel like they were missing much, and maybe they really enjoyed the freedom that they experienced when they got home or when they had that extra time at home. Maybe they could spend time at a longer vacation, or maybe they could just sleep in on a Sunday morning, get 2 extra days of good sleep. Whatever it is, we saw churches across the country have church attendance decline. And so I would just really want to implore you that if you're listening to this today, to recognize that meeting of the church body is much more than attending a worship service. You know, we get to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 24. It says, "Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching." The first thing that we see is it's a lot more than just an appointment. It's a lot more than just a day of the week whenever we gather together. Although the New Testament church met together on the first day of the week, it was more than that. The church was meeting together so they could encourage one another, so that they could lift one another up, so that they could be a light in the lives, a shot in the arm, if you will, as they saw one another. They participated in this fellowship. The word is koinonia. It's this working together, and we lift one another up, and we lean on one another, and we praise with one another. And it's supposed to be so much more than an event that we show up to and we watch people participate in. We are supposed to be participating in that event of worship. The other thing, when we look at a meeting, we say that meeting together is more. It is certainly more than 2 or 3. You know, people want to use what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18 and verse 20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there in the midst of them. And they think that for some reason that Jesus was talking about worship. What Jesus was actually talking about was whenever you are judging, whenever you rebuke a brother. It's a pretty sharp word and a pretty sharp passage that's there, but it's about making judgments on people. Whenever people are committing sin and the brotherhood has to get together and determine whether or not a person is sinning or not, God says that when 2 or more are gathered and in agreement on that judgment and in my name, I am there in the midst of them. He's not talking about church attendance. And so whenever we start thinking about what our responsibility is, Hebrews chapter 10, it says that we don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. We don't use the excuse of, oh, there were 2 or 3 of us that decided to stay home. Me and my wife and the kids, that's more than 2 or 3. We can stay home. The church, the word church, the ecclesia is the assembled, those that come together to assemble. God's plan for the church was that we would have all things in common, that we would be together, that we would share in the struggles of life as we see that day approaching. It's so much more than 2 or 3. And then when we get to the end of verse 26, it's so much more than just fulfilling a commandment. There are some people that have cheapened church attendance, that, hey, this is just something I've got to do, or it's something that I have to do, is what's often said. I have to go to church. Let me ask you to look at yourself and ask yourself, when I describe going to worship God with the saints, do I say I have to go to church? Attending worship services isn't just a commandment. It's an opportunity that we have to worship the God that created us. It says that we should be using it to exhort one another, and so much more as we see the day approaching. We're not to forsake it because we don't leave the body that is Christ. Well, we don't forsake it because it's not just some checklist that God wants us to do. It's good for us, but it's mostly good for us because we worship God. I hope you'd be encouraged that our meetings together, when we come together to worship on Sundays on the first day of the week like the first century church did, it's so much more than rules. It's so much more than appointments. It's more than just my family. It's all of the body of believers coming together to lift up the name of God, to thank Him for what He's done for us. I hope this was encouraging to you. I hope this would light a fire in you to be more faithful to the body of believers that are trying to work together with you to lift up Christ's name. I know that if you are in our area and you want to know what that's like, come and visit us at Ruston Church of Christ. We would love to allow you to be with us as we experience the presence of God in our worship. It's a wonderful experience. We love to worship God. We would love for you to come and learn more about Him and worship Him with us. Thank you so much. God bless.